Welcome to our next module, Democracy Defined. As a reminder, these are being recorded in a way that you can start, stop, replay. That way you'll be able to get all the content that you need. So let's hop right into it. Democracy Defined. Democracy. Form government where policy decisions are based on the freely given consent of the people and people are guaranteed certain rights. Okay. One thing I want you to start doing is trying to look at this material through a fresh eye. Some of these things and these concepts that you've been taught and told since you were very, very little. Okay. And for some of you who are old enough to remember Schoolhouse Rock, some of these things were part of your childhood through those Saturday morning videos. But just keep in mind that this definition is something that should be somewhat automatic for us, but not everyone around the world buys into this. But form of government or policy decisions are based on the freely given consent of the people. So we willingly allow this government to really act on our behalf, but that last part of the definition, people are guaranteed certain rights. So with this, and implicit in this definition, is the notion of popular sovereignty. We keep talking about that, but ultimately is the belief, the fundamental belief, that the true ultimate authority and power rest with the citizens, with the people, not with some other entity. All right. Now, the two forms of democracy that we discuss. First is direct vote. So in this case, this is not where you transfer your decision-making authority to anyone else. So in this form of democracy or manifestation of it, this is where you are voting for yourself on whatever policy issue there might be out there. Some examples, if you remember from your Western Civ class, ancient Athens. So in ancient Athens, if you were a citizen, you would vote for yourself, by yourself, collectively with everyone else in regards to whatever the policy issue may be. If you happen to be from New England, you have some familiarity with this. New England town halls. Okay, so this is where you would actually show up for the town hall, and whatever policy decision was being voted on, you would be able to participate. In other areas like us here locally, if you go to a city council meeting, you can participate but not vote. All right. Now, the one type of direct vote that we're most familiar with are referendums. Think about a school bond or something along those lines, right? So when you go and vote, you might vote for different candidates here and there, but a lot of times at the tail end of the vote of the ballot, you may see certain items, like school bond is just a really good example of that. In that case, you are not voting for someone else to make policy decisions for you and on your behalf. You are voting directly on that issue at hand. All right. So that way, if there's a school bond up for consideration, you yourself can vote for or against it, and then collectively just tally up the votes, and either passes or it doesn't. All right. Now, the second type of democracy that we discuss is representative. This is more what you would be thinking about in terms of how we operate. Transfer of decision-making authority to elected officials. Now, this is a little technicality, but I want you to consider this. We still believe in popular sovereignty. So this word transfer, the authority really belongs to you and to me. We are just transferring our authority to someone else to act on our behalf. All right. Now, when it comes to representative democracy, there are some basic advantages that we can think of. All right. And the first, more expedient. From an administrative standpoint, having representatives act on behalf of the collective just makes things a lot quicker and easier. Okay. So if you think about Congress as it is, I know we have all the jokes about how they don't get anything done, but if you think about the House of Representatives, 435 people, the Senate, 100, if you think about their ability to discuss and make policy for all of us in those numbers, it's a lot more expedient than everybody trying to vote on everything. Think about it this way. Even in the digital age, the point and click environment that we have, it's still, just think of the massive amount of resources and effort it would take to have just one issue all of us point and click on. So again, representative democracy, more expedient. Now, there's another angle to a representative democracy, and I've got a couple bullet points here that kind of go together. But you know, I always think of it this way. As much as it pains me to admit, I may not be the most qualified person in the world to do certain things, right? And so from that standpoint, more qualified leaders. What if there's someone who is more trained in public policy, economics, or whatever, and has the better ability, capacity to make better decisions along those lines? And so that's the other thing that goes hand in hand with this. So if you have transfer of your authority to someone else who can hopefully, and it is in your notes, hopefully be more qualified and thus make better decisions, that would be a good thing. Think of it this way. I'm not the greatest cook in the world. You know, my mantra is Mitch is cooking, it won't make you sick. So luckily I married a very good cook. So from that standpoint, I don't have the ability or capacity as others would. So that's where it's better for someone else to be in the kitchen than me. I know how to pick a good restaurant, but that's another story. Another thing is, think about building a bridge or something like that. You would want a trained engineer to do that kind of work, right? So again, hopefully we are picking more qualified decision makers and having better decisions as a result. Now, there's one other angle to this when you think about these folks wielding power on our behalf. There are two words that a lot of times when you put them together, they really don't conjure up warm fuzzies. You know, we talked about politics a couple modules ago, but think about these two words. Career politician, right? I know. That's not something that really rolls off the tongue too easily. But think of it this way for a second. Think about where you work, what you do for a living. How long did it take you to get to a point where you were comfortable, very proficient in performing the job duties, right? There is a learning curve when it comes to that. So when it comes to a representative form of democracy, if we have folks who professionally do this on our behalf, they learn how to become more effective and things like that, just like you and I in our regular daily jobs, right? So the experience does come into play to help augment the skill set that we talked about a couple minutes ago. Another thing I want you to consider with this is that we talked about Weber's basis of political power and that focus and push towards legitimacy. And remember, we talked about the legal structure, how that promoted legitimacy as well. I want you to kind of consider that again. In this case, having that structure around the representative democracy, that whole process of transferring authority to someone else to make decisions on our behalf, and that structure of who is going to represent whom and so forth. Again, that structure itself, similar to what we discussed with Weber, does promote a level of legitimacy as well. All right. Again, thank you for your time in this module, and we will pick it up with you in the next module in a few minutes. Thank you.